Okay, so you are going to see our second entrepreneur is Lee Byung-chul. So better known by his pen name Ho Am. He's the founder of Samsung Group. So the Lee Byung-chul was born in 1910 into a wealthy landowner family. They're very, very different from Chung Ju-young's poor background. So he had education and resources, but he also had a vision that went far beyond just making money. So he is the architect who transformed Korea from an agricultural economy into an industrial powerhouse itself. So when he died in 1987, Samsung was already a massive conglomerate, but his real legacy was the blueprint he created for Korean economic development. Okay, by the way, so the name Samsung in Korean, Samsung means three stars. So Lee chose this name because he wanted the company to represent something powerful, bright, and eternal. So he wanted it to shine from high places. So today, if you are watching this on a Samsung phone or screen, you are experiencing the legacy of Lee Byung-chul's vision. So let's explore his three core philosophies. So his first philosophy is talent management. So Lee Byung-chul once said something remarkable. I spent 80% of my life finding and managing people. So think about that. 80%, not on strategy, not on finance, not on marketing, on people, HR. And he believed and proved that talent is the ultimate competitive advantage itself. So let me show you his philosophy through what I call the talent first pyramid. This one. So what is the talent first pyramid? So at the top of the pyramid, world-class performance. So how do you get world-class performance? You need world-class people. But you can't just recruit talented people and hope they become world-class. So you need the second level, investment in development itself. This is second level. So pour resources into training, education. So training and exposure to new ideas. Send your best people to study at top universities worldwide. You give them challenging projects that stretch their capabilities. But where do you get the talented people to invest in? So you need the third level. Recruit the best people possible itself. So those compete for top talent, pay well, offer better opportunities than your competitors, but recruitment only works if you have the foundation. Talent is our greatest asset. So not just as this is Lee Byung-chul's pyramid, and he built, so not just as a slogan, but as a core belief that drives every decision. Okay, so here is the practical implementation. So let me give you some concrete examples of how Lee implemented this. First, Samsung became the first major Korean company to hire college graduates through systematic recruitment. Before this, most companies hired through the personal connections. So Lee insists on merit-based hiring itself. So I'm gonna write it. Lee Byung-cho insists on merit to the based hiring. So before his hiring system, so normally is we hire the people by the personal connections. And second, Samsung invested heavily in training programs. Training program. So he sent hundreds of employees to America, Europe, and Japan to learn advanced management and engineering. So this was expensive, but he saw it as essential investment. And third, Samsung paid higher salaries. They provide higher salaries than competitors. So when people criticize this, so he said, we need the best people. The best people have options. If we want them, we must compensate them fairly. And fourth, he was the first Korean businessman to use the term professional manager. So use the term professional manager. So executives promoted the best on performance, not family connections. So this was revolutionary in 1960s Korea. So where businesses were typically family controlled with the family members in key positions. So why this matters? By prioritizing talent, Samsung built organizational capability that competitors couldn't match. So when Samsung decided to enter semiconductor in the 1980s, maybe, so which seemed crazy at the time. So they had engineers who had been trained at the best universities worldwide. They had a manager who understood complex global supply chains. So they had researchers who could compete with anyone. So this talent base is what enabled Samsung to go from nowhere to number one in semiconductors within 2 decades. So here is the lesson. So your competitive advantage is not your ideas. It's not your technology. It's not even your capital. It's your people. If you build the best team, so everything else becomes possible. So HR is the most important for the Samsung system. Okay, so we are going to see the second core philosophy is visionary insight. So Lee Byung-chul's second philosophy was about seeing the future before others did. So let me show you the evolution of Samsung to illustrate this. Okay, so first, 1950s post-war period. So after the Korean War, the economy was devastated. The country was importing almost everything: food, textiles, medicine, etc. So he looked at this and thought we are too dependent on imports, so we need a domestic production. So he founded 제일제당 and J Industries and Korea Fertilizer. The goal is to reduce import dependence plus dependence. So he want to build basic industries. And, and one of the interesting fact, 제일제당 is well known CJ in Korea in recent days. CJ is famous for the entertainment industry in Korea. So many foreigners have interest in K-pop and K culture. So many K K things comes from the CJ groups itself. Okay, anyway. So this might seem so obvious now, but in the 1950s, many businesses were focused on importing and distributing foreign goods because that's where quick profits were. But he took the harder path of building manufacturing capability. So after this time, it's 1960s to 70s, the heavy industry. So by the 1960s, Lee saw the next phase. Korea needed a heavy industry. So Samsung expanded it to shipbuilding, steel production, construction. So the goal is to build industrial capabilities, to create infrastructure. So again, so this requires huge capital investment with long payback periods. So many thought he was crazy. But he understood that you can't build an advanced economy without heavy industry itself. So after this period, 80s to 90s, semiconductor revolution, so this is where Lee's vision became truly remarkable. So in the early 1980s, semiconductors were dominated by American and Japanese companies. The technology was complex. The capital requirements were enormous. The risks were huge. So most Korean businessmen looked at semiconductor and said, "That's not for us. That's for advanced country." Many people say that. But he looked at the semiconductor and said, "That's the future. If we don't enter now, Korea will always be behind." So in 1983, Samsung made a massive bet, investing hundreds of millions of dollars into semiconductor factory. Manufacturing itself. So people thought he was insane. So the technology did not exist in Korea. The expertise didn't exist, of course. The market was crowded with established players, but Lee had a crucial insight that the semiconductor industry was about to explode. So memory chips would become essential to everything: computers, phone, cars, etc. So whoever dominated the memory chips would dominate the future. So in 2000 and beyond, so global tech leadership. Today, Samsung is the world's largest memory chip manufacturer. So they are a leader in smartphones, in display technology, in 5G infrastructure. So this did not happen by accident. It happened because in the 1980s, so when it seems crazy. So he had the vision to see where technology was heading. Okay, so this is all things about Lee Byung-chul's second core philosophy story. Um, okay, so this is his famous quote: "I don't see money in front of my eyes." So what is the mean? He meant I'm not looking at today's profits. I'm looking at tomorrow's potential. So I'm willing to lose money today to build capability for the future. So this is a long-term thinking. This is a visionary side itself. Okay, so we are moving to the core philosophy, third core philosophy, business acumen, the catfish theory. So catfish theory comes from an experiment Lee conducted before he became a businessman. So let me tell you this story because it beautifully illustrates entrepreneurial thinking. Okay, so the rice paddy experiment. So when he was young, so before founding Samsung, he went to university in Japan, but dropped out to return to Korea. He started farming on his family's land, but Lee was not a typical farmer. He was always experimenting, always testing new ideas. So one season, he wanted to increase rice yield. So at the time, Korean rice paddies typically produce about 27 sacks of rice per plot, even in good conditions. So Lee set up an experiment with four plots of equal size. So plot A, the control group, so standard rice farming with the fertilizer. Result, 27 sacks of rice. This was the baseline. So normal productivity. And plot B, the Loach experiment. So rice farming, but instead of just fertilizer, so he added 1,000 baby loaches, small fish, to the paddy. The result, at harvest, the loaches had multitude 2,000 loaches. When sold, the loaches were worth the equivalent to 47 sacks worth. So he was excited. Adding fish to rice paddies increased the total value dramatically. So plus C, just loaches, just. So curious, he tried a plot with 1,000 roaches but minimal rice to see if the should force focus entirely on fish farming. The result is Esther. Because the roaches ate each other's population crushed. The lesson, roaches need the rice paddy ecosystem to thrive. Plot D, the catfish innovation. This is where it gets brilliant. He thought, why did the roaches multiply so much in plot B, but eat each other in plot C? So he had a hypothesis. In plot B, the roaches were more active because they were foraging in the rice paddy environment. In plot C, with nothing to do, they became aggressive toward each other. So he tried something radical. In plot D, he added 1,000 baby roaches and 20 catfish, so which are natural predator of roaches. Now, you had thinking adding predator would reduce the roach population, right? So the result, the roach population exploded to 4,000 roaches, and he also had 200 catfish to sell. So interesting, isn't it? So what happened is, why did adding predator increase productivity? Because the roaches is knowing there were predator in the water, stayed active, stayed alert, stayed moving. So this increased their foraging, their metabolism, their reproduction. The presence of danger made them more alive, more productive. The catfish ate some roaches, yes, but the competition and threat caused the overall system to thrive. We call this the catfish effect or catfish theory. Okay, so here is a business application. This experiment became his philosophy for business management and for understanding markets. So competition make you better. So if you are in comfortable monopoly, you get lazy. So if you have a strong competitor, you stay sharp. And second, crisis creates opportunity. When there is a predator in your environment, whether it's a market downturn, a new competitor, or a technological disruption, you either set up or you die. So most companies that set up become stronger. And last, the pressure limits capability. You don't know what you are capable of until you are pushed. So this is why he welcomed competition. This is why Samsung often encouraged internal competition between teams. This is why he pushed into difficult new markets rather than staying comfortable in existing ones. Okay, so So I'm gonna give the modern example. So think about the modern example of the catfish example. The first, Netflix. So Netflix was the catfish that made Disney, HBO, and traditional studio radical innovative. Disney Plus emerged as a response to Netflix and is now a major player. And second, Tesla. Tesla was the catfish that made every traditional car company accelerate their electric vehicle programs. So now we have electric vehicles from everyone, and the technology has advanced faster than anyone predicted. And so Spotify also have a good example for it. Spotify. So Spotify was the catfish in music. Apple, Amazon, YouTube all improved their music service in response. Okay, so competition and challenge drive excellence itself. So before we move on, so let me share one more insight from Lee Byung-chul. So late in his life, he was asked what does it take to build a successful business. He said you need three things, and only three things, but you need all three. You need all three. The first is idea, it's a vision and innovation. So what are you creating? Why does it matter? And second, capital, financial resources. How will you fund it? Where does the money come from? And last, business sense. The practical wisdom. So how do markets really work? So what do customers really want? How do you execute? So he said, none alone is sufficient. All three must work together. All three must work together. Okay, so I'm gonna give the summary for Lee Byung-chul's three philosophies. The first philosophy is talent management. Invest 80% of your energy in finding and developing great people, and your competitive advantage is your team. As a pay for the best, invest in their growth. And second philosophy, visionary insight. Look beyond today's profits to tomorrow's potential and position yourself for where the world is going, not where it is. Be willing to make big bets on the future. And the second philosophy, business acumen, the catfish theory, is a competition to make you better. It's a pressure limits capability. Welcome challengers, they make you stronger. Okay, so before going to the third entrepreneur, so pause again and think about this. So in your life right now, who or what is your catfish? So who challenges you to be better? And if you don't have one, so how can you create that pressure for yourself? So think about it. If you have time, so write the answer. Okay, so it's all things about the Lee Byung-chul's entrepreneurial story. So we need to take a break first. Thank you.